My name's Len Unwin. I'm Curriculum Team Leader here at the Sheffield College, and today we are going to cover enriched dough. The ingredients for an enriched dough, we will use strong white flour, we will use fresh yeast, we will use sugar, we'll use whole egg, salt and unsalted butter. In the ingredients we use a strong white flour because it has a high gluten content, and that gives the dough elasticity. It allows us to knead the dough, stretch those protein strands out, and then what that will do, it will allow the bread to rise to its full volume. The yeast we are using is fresh yeast. Now, an enriched dough requires more fresh yeast than a traditional white bread. This is because of the enriching agents, which are the egg, the sugar and the butter. These ingredients have a retarding effect on the dough, so they slow the dough's process down. The increased amount of yeast speeds that process back up again. You can tell a good quality yeast. It's soft, it's malleable, it doesn't crumble, and it smells pleasant. If you got a yeast that was old, that would crumble and be dry, and it would look more grey than brown. The colour of the yeast really gives a good indication as to the quality of it. So I've got a pre-prepared bowl, and we have the strong white flour, and I'm going to sieve the flour just to make sure we've got no additional foreign bodies in there, and also it will add a lightness to the finished dough. We are going to take the salt and the sugar into there. So we're dispersing that throughout. What we don't want to happen is the yeast to come in direct contact with the salt. If we let salt come in direct contact with yeast, it starts to break down the yeast and it will eventually kill it. We will take a little bit of water and milk. The milk again is an enriching agent, so by splitting it 50-50 we can add that little bit of richness but also not impact too much on the dough's development. And we're going to add that to our yeast, probably about 1/3 of the liquid, and we're just going to break it into so it becomes a nice solution. The milk, it's really important that the temperature isn't too hot. The ideal temperature is around about 36 degrees, which is blood temperature. The easiest way to do that is either with a temperature probe and just check your temperature, or if you pop your finger in, it won't feel hot, it won't feel cold. If the yeast mixture is too cold, it will still work, it will just take longer to develop. I'm going to take that yeast and pop that in. And make sure that you get all of that yeast out of the bowl. And pop it onto a machine with a dough hook. Now you'll notice the dough hook has got a certain shape to it. That's so it doesn't beat the product, it actually stretches and kneads and develops it. So we will add our beaten egg. Again, making sure you get everything out of there. Pop the dough hook in. And start it going on its slowest setting. We're just starting to incorporate those products. And we're going to add about 3/4 of that remaining milk. When you're working with liquids and flour, different flours have different absorption rates. Sometimes if the flour's been stored in a humid environment, it will take less moisture to bring it together to a dough. If it's been stored in a very dry environment, it might take a little bit more. So I think by the look of this, it's going to take all of our milk. And don't be impatient, let the dough come together. Don't look at it and think, oh, that's quite dry, because you'll be surprised how much it comes together. We'll then work that for about a minute, and we're just letting that flour absorb all of that moisture. I can see now that the dough is starting to come clean away from the sides of the bowl, and this is where I'm going to start adding my butter. So the butter is what we call pomade. So the butter is soft and squashes between the fingers. Not runny, not melted, just softened. So I'm going to feed it in, and you notice I've cut the butter into small dice, so it works into the dough a lot easier. If you try and add big chunks of butter, it doesn't go in quite so well. If you're taking your butter directly from the fridge, dice it up and just pop it into the microwave 10-15 seconds just to take that edge off it. So what we're doing now, we're feeding the dough, but don't do it too quickly, let it come in slowly. Like so. And then once all the butter's gone in and I can't see any more traces of butter, what I shall then do is turn the speed up to about a medium speed and leave it kneading for about 8 to 10 minutes. And then we will get a nice, shiny, smooth, elastic dough. So I can't see any more butter now, so I'm going to increase the speed and let that work for about 8 to 10 minutes. If you are using a stand mixer, these small mixers can sometimes be a little bit unstable, so make sure you don't walk away and leave it on a table, because they can move and fall off your table in a worst case scenario. But it's just coming together, and I'll leave that running now. So checking our dough now, we can see it's gone very smooth. You can hear it flapping, so it's moving away from the sides of the bowl. And that's a really good indicator. It's had now about 9 minutes, so I'm going to turn the machine off and remove the weight. And the best way we can test this, if the machine, the bowl looks shiny where the dough has been, we get a nice glisten to it. And also the other thing that we're looking for is a really good stretch, nice and elastic, which means we've developed those gluten strands. So we'll clean that away from the dough hook, and then just loosen it up from the bowl with your bowl scraper, and we will keep the bowl, just pull the dough back on itself, so we end up making a nice smooth ball. And just with a very, very small amount of flour, just dust the bottom of the bowl, take the dough, pop it back in that bowl. We could place it in a retarder prover. So a retarder prover is a warming cabinet, which is very humid. If I was doing that, I wouldn't cling film it, I would let the humidity be all around. If you've not got a retarder prover, some cling film over and in a warm place. If you didn't want to use the dough straight away and you wanted to use it, say, later on in the afternoon, what you could then do is pop it in the fridge and allow that dough to grow and develop at a slower rate. So continuing on with our enriched dough, we've allowed it to prove, and it has now doubled in size, and what we've got is a really smooth, silky, soft dough. And we will take that out with our bowl scraper, and what you can see is we've got those nice elastic strands that have formed. The proving process is really important with the dough. What we are trying to achieve is the yeast to create a lot of carbon dioxide in there, which is effectively going to be our raising agent, but also importantly flavour. So in this section I'm going to show you two different shapes for baking and another shape for donuts. So I'm just going to divide the dough in half. So the first one, and we keep the dough in our plastic bag so it doesn't skin over. Just going to take a baking sheet, which we're going to spray with release spray, and take a nice piece of silicone paper which we can then cut to size. We're going to scale the dough off at 50 grams. So just put that on our tray with our paper over, so it stops it again drying out. And again, we do the 50 grams because that gives us a nice shape and size, and importantly gives consistency for our customers. So, this piece. So they're the ones we're going to shape by hand. The other one we're going to take and we're going to just flatten down and take our rolling pin. Tiny touch of flour on the table, tiny touch of flour on top. And we're just going to pin it out like so, and then I'm just going to put it to one side to relax again. While I'm doing that, I'm going to take the rolls and I'm going to shape them all up down on the table, flat of the hand, which we're going to bring up into a cone shape, pressing down firmly on the table, and we bring them up like so. Down we go, flat of the hand, brought up. Again, as you start to feel more confident, take two, flat of the hand, like so. One, and then what I'm just going to do, just give that one a little reshape. With the first ones that I did, I'm now going to press down, going to bring over and over and over, and then roll, and then just put there to relax, because what we're going to create with those is a shape for an iced finger roll. So over, so we're creating tension. And then once we've done those, we'll go back to the first one and re-roll. Ideally you would have given them more, but you can already see between number 1 and number 2, it's now held its shape better. go. So there's 2 ways of rolling ready for baking. And then the final one I'm going to show you is to make donuts. So for the donuts, we've rolled our dough. Let's give it another one again to take it back. And we need some pastry cutters and a little bit of flour. What you have to bear in mind is these are going to grow double in size. So don't go for a big cutter because you like a big donut, because it's going to be the world's biggest donut. Slightly smaller, dip into your flour, cut and cut. All the way. If you wanted ring donuts, the easiest way of doing those is take a larger cutter, stamp out with the large cutter, and then take a smaller cutter and cut the inside. And then they are your nice uniform. This dough isn't wasted. This dough can be re-rolled and reworked and used to make more donuts, more products. Then obviously we take that one out of there, goes onto there. So these all now go to prove. Dependent upon what you're going to do with your donuts, with your enriched dough, you could at this stage egg wash it, ready for proving to give a nice glaze and sheen, or on certain rolls you might want a matte finish and then do a sugar glaze afterwards. The ones with the donuts, what we're going to do, because we're going to deep fry them, we're just going to cut the piece of paper, which is silicone paper, because then if you try and lift a proven roll up into a fryer, what you'll find is it can distort in your fingers, whereas what we can do is pick them up at the corners and then just lower the paper in the fryer, and then what will happen is the paper will float away and your donuts will come off nice and easily. So once they're on there, again we're going to cover them, making sure that we've greased the inside of the bag. We don't want that to stick, and we've created a nice humid environment for our product to prove for a second time. So here we are with our enriched dough products. We've made a small selection. So we've done some Devonshire splits, which have got a raspberry jam inside, a sweetened vanilla cream on top. We've also made those into the torpedo shape. Using those torpedo shape, we've also made iced bun fingers, where we've just done a very simple water ice, but instead of all water we've added raspberry puree, so it's not food colouring. We've added some nice flavour into those products, and we've also created some donuts from that. So just to recap on the process, we made our initial dough, we took our strong flour, we added our salt and sugar, and then we diluted our yeast down, added the yeast, added the water, bringing it together to a nice dough. And then from that dough, once it started to be incorporated, we slowly fed in the pomade or softened butter, working all the way, let it work for about 9 minutes on the machine, and then we develop a nice smooth elastic dough that has a real nice shine to it. We then put it to prove for about an hour, knocked that dough back, shaped our rolls, re-proved for about half an hour, 40 minutes, and here's the finished products by both baking and deep frying as methods of cookery.